Hey guys, today's lecture is on Hinduism. Now for this first part of the class, I'm going to go through 6 of the religions, major religions around the world. I could have picked a lot more than 6, but I don't want this to be a world religion class. I just want to be able to bring in some terms throughout the class, and so we want to talk about these 6 so you'll have that information when it comes into play. This first part of the class are Eastern religions. A lot of time with Eastern religions, people go straight for Buddhism. I kind of like Hinduism a little bit better. And then there's the Abrahamic religions I mentioned before. Now, when it comes to Hinduism, they have a lot to say about what drives us, what motivates us. And I give a lot of lectures on motivation, and so today's lecture is a little bit of that. They say that humans have 4 basic drives. Number 1 is kama, which is pleasure. That's like the Kama Sutra, the teaching about sexual pleasure, that whole book. Okay, so they say human beings are driven by pleasure. Well, that makes sense to me, especially I've done a lot of drugs. It's like I call it getting off. People want drugs, sex, whatever makes them feel good, alcohol. And they don't say not to do it. They just say, see if that works for you. It probably is not going to work for you. You could worship kama or pleasure, but there's probably other drives that are more satisfying. The second drive is worldly success, which I call ego. Okay, so look at me, I'm a big shot, have power, I control things, I own things. I don't know if you listen to a lot of gangster rap like Tim. I do, but if you listen to a lot of hip hop and gangster rap, it's like, I like to get high and get, whatever, have sex, and I have a lot of ego and presence, and I'm a pimp and a player, and look at the shit I own, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. They say that's only the beginning of the story. The third drive is called Dharma, which is duty to others or service. There is a group here in Phoenix called Dharma punks, service to others. And then finally, the last one is Moksha, which is liberation. Emancipation, which really means that when you go back and commune with the divine. I'll get more into Moksha a little bit later. Okay, so if you look at the first 2 drives, they sometimes call them the path of desire, either physical pleasure, kama, or ego, self, centric kind of pleasure where it's all about me. All those have to do with desire, pleasing yourself. But they say as you evolve spiritually, you move away from self and start to renounce yourself. And the path of renunciation begins with service to others, dharma, right here. And then, oops, let me get a different marker here. And then finally you get moksha, communion with God. Okay, so are you here for service or comfort? Because if it's kama and artha, and that's what society is teaching, then you're here for comfort. I just want to be a safe, comfy animal. Nothing bad happens to me, and I get to have fun and have pleasure. And I just kind of say, fuck that shit. That's not what life's about, because I'm a Christian. It's like everything God gave you, you're supposed to give back in some way. Your eyes, your ears, your feet, your house, your money. Don't give it all away, but it's supposed to be in service to God, not in service to self. I'll give a whole nother lecture on this on another day. Okay, so one of the things I'll talk about on another day is money nest. Like people go, oh, if I just had enough money, if I just earn enough money, this is why retirement kills me. It's not Christian. When I earn enough money to where I can just sit on my fat ass for 20 years and just serve myself and just have fun. It's like, yeah, but stewardship, that's like musical chairs. Well, I got a chair. I'm sorry you didn't get a chair. I love when Mother Teresa says, if someone's hungry, just give them something to eat. Don't ask them why they're hungry. You know what I mean? It's just like, don't give them a lecture. Just give them a sandwich and move on. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show, and we'll be done with this section. This comes from Led Zeppelin. There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying a Stairway to Heaven. I think she's at Fashion Square right now in Scottsdale. You know what I'm talking about, right? If it's money, kama or artha, especially artha. Look at our big house on the hill. It's like, well, then that would fix you. And it's really at dharma or moksha. Okay, this section is on the self. Now, I have this blade of grass on here for a reason because I want to use an analogy. Say we have a field of grass, and each blade of grass represents a person. So here I am over here and go, look at me, I'm special, I'm Tim, I'm a blade of grass. And here you are over here, it's like, no, but I'm special, look at me, I'm a blade of grass. And we are so self-centric that we only focus on ourselves, we miss out on the field, that together we make this field up. And so it would be like waves on an ocean thinking they're special and then never seeing the ocean. You can't see the forest for the trees. And I argue that a lot of times we, including myself, become so myopic, so self-centric, focused on ourselves, that we can't see that we're part of a bigger universe. And so Albert Einstein says this right here: a human being is part of a whole called by us the universe. I'm glad I used that word. And so I experience myself, my thoughts and feelings as something separate. And he says this is an optical delusion of my consciousness that creates a prison for us. I call it my Tim prison. If I focus on my Timness all the time, then I'm imprisoned. And if I get out of my Timness, I'm liberated. And so I'm going to come back to this again and again, is if I focus on my own singular blade of grass all the time, I'll miss out on the field, which I call God, but you could call it the universe. Now, when it comes to Hinduism, one of the things they talk about is identifying with the false self. This kind of comes into the blade of grass thing. But our ego is our false self. My name, Tim. That's not who I am. That's just who my, whatever character is on this incarnation. But there is my true self, and they have a word for it, and I want you to remember this: Atman. I would like to name a kid this. That's your true self. Not your phony self, your persona, the essence of that which is true, your spirit, your soul. So I'll come back and I'll use this, dilemma that we have, with showing a certain face to the world, especially when I get into Jungian thought, and what's really the essence of that which you are. Now, if you take a human, I like this little graph, and you subtract the ego, then you get God, because Atman is God. God lives within all of us. In Hinduism, they do believe that, all of us are divine, and that at a certain point you will find out that you are God just as much as everybody else is. That's what the word namaste means. It means the divinity within me recognizes and honors the divinity I see within you when we both get to Atman. Okay, so the self has 4 layers. And the first layer we identify with is our body. It's like, I'm my body. Look at me. People work out, try to work on their body, their appearance, everything else, because they think they are their body, but their body's going to decay and die. Okay, so the second thing is our mind. Oh, my thoughts. I'm my mind. It's like, yeah, but then the chatter that goes on in here, it's like, I don't know. Is that really me? And then later on, I'll get into Sigmund Freud. It's like, yeah, but what about subconscious mind and how that drives us, all Shutter Island style? Maybe it's that. And they say the deepest level is the infinite. When you get down to Atman, you get past all that bullshit to the true self, which is divinity. Now, one of the things that reminds me of this is Jonathan, because at first he wants to fly. And then it's like, oh, it's how I think. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get in touch with these things and hopefully get to moksha down here. Okay, hopefully some of that made sense. Now, I've been talking a lot about this word moksha. I really think you're supposed to say it moksha, but I'm a country boy. And it really means communion with God. And so they don't usually use the word God. I haven't gotten into the deities. It's Brahman, but we'll get to there in a second. Now, I have this quote from Gandhi. I love this. What I want to achieve, what I've been striving and pining to achieve his whole life is to attain moksha, liberation. All that I do and all that I say is to attain this. And so this is great, to see God face to face. That's another way of thinking about moksha or moksha. I have the tattoo. I don't know if I can show it to you, but it's this one right here on my arm. It means moksha. Okay, so enough about that. So one of the things I really adore about Hinduism is they say that there's many paths to God. One of the analogies I use is a mountain. There's a lot of different pathways up a mountain, but you could use as spokes of a wheel, how they all lead to the center, and so it doesn't matter which spoke you pick, you will end up in the center. And so from a lot of traditional religions, they say, nope, our path is the only path. All the other ones are bullshit. And so from Hinduism, they say, no, there's a lot of different kinds of people. So God invented a lot of different kinds of paths to suit different types of people. Wow, that's evolved. I love this quote. There are hundreds of paths up the mountain. Doesn't matter which one you take. The only person wasting time is the one running around at the bottom saying that your path is wrong. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so yoga, believe it or not, because usually when I go to yoga class, I get my ass kicked, especially in Bikram, but yoga has a physical component to it, but what it's really designed to do is achieve moksha, commune with God, to become one with the divine spirit in the universe. And so it comes from the word yoke. Yoke, you yoke oxen, you tie them together. What am I tying myself together with? God. Okay, and so this is a method to unite with God. Sorry, I'm using the word God, as you should say Brahman, but we haven't gotten to the God yet. And that eventually, basically, I will unite. Uniting with God is the definition of moksha. Okay, so on the next several slides, what I'm going to go through is four, if you can see my hand, four different types of yoga and how they unite people with God. Okay, the first kind of yoga that I want to talk about is jnana yoga or jnana. I can't say it right. It's the path of knowledge. For the test, this is all I want you to remember. As far as the four kinds of yoga, I'll show you four different words. But I will show you a lot of bullet points down here. You don't have to write that down. But this is kind of what Tim does. He listens to sages and scriptures, whether I go to mass, whether I'm driving around in my car, listen to a podcast of a sermon, reading like spiritual books, working on lectures. I'm doing it all day long because I think if I think about God more and read more and more and more about him, I'm always thirsty for more information that's spiritual, that somehow I get close to God. And so another thing I do is think about myself, introspect on who I am, what's my true self, what's my persona that I'm projecting out here, and I reflect a lot on myself. And something weird I've always done, but they say they do it, is think of myself in the third person. It's like, man, Tim is getting really angry right now in this situation. What's wrong? Why would he act like that? Instead of saying, I'm getting really angry, I know it's kind of trippy, but in some situations that helps me to divorce myself from my false self. Okay, enough about that. The second kind is called bhakti. I remember this because there's a kind of chai tea, I love chai tea, called bhakti. And this kind of yoga, you're uniting or tying yourself with God through the path of love. Now, I can kind of relate to this too because this Thursday night it'll be adoration. I'm a Catholic, and so I love adoration. Just sit there and stare at Jesus, and the adoration that people do over and over and over. But it doesn't have to be a Christian thing. This is Hindu. And so there's all kinds of loves too, and they say that the different kinds of loves, including sexual love, we'll get into tantra and stuff like that later, reflect, the love of God. And they also say you can worship God in your chosen form, which is an ishta. I don't expect you to remember any of this stuff down here. You can forget about all that stuff. Just remember it's the path of love. That's number 2. Okay, number 3 is karma. It's easy to remember because karma, your actions determine your consequences, so it's all about actions. So how you work. I love to work. This is why I hate time off. I don't like Saturday and Sunday or the summer vacation. That sucks. It's like I want to be at work. Monday's my favorite day because I have a purpose. I'm not doing stuff to entertain Tim, which is Tim-centric. I'm doing stuff for other people because every time I do something for me, it says, it adds a layer between me and God. And every time I don't do something for me, I'm self-sacrificing. It takes a layer away. So I'm going to use this analogy. When I get lost in stuff while I'm working. I don't know if y'all get like this on this third bullet point. I'm going to use this analogy for Atman, my true self. Here's my true self right down in here in the middle of the onion. Every time I do something for somebody else or help other people out and don't worry about Tim and serve others, I get down to the true Tim. Like when I'm at a church, like helping out, it's like I'm working on stuff. I'm Tim. There's no problems. Teaching's the same way. But then I start like, I just want to sit around and play video games. I don't want to do this and buy shit for myself. And every time it seems like a good idea, but I become callous and hard and critical and jaded, and it's like I need to get back into service or stewardship. This is why I'm big on karma yoga. The very last kind is called Raja yoga. It comes from this word Raj, royal, Raja, Rani, like prince and princess, or the Raj was the British rule within Mother India. Anyway, I'll get to this one later. It's the mystical path, the yogis, Y-O-G-I, yogi, are the mystics that can supposedly levitate and stop their hearts and do all this stuff in these deep meditative states. And so we'll get into these meditative states a little bit later on in another lecture because I want to save that for the lecture on mystical experiences and all these other things that I'm going to talk about. Okay, I hope those four made sense. Okay, in this brief section, I was going to go through some of the sacred books that there are in Hinduism because I'm a white boy. I'm just like, what's their Bible? And it's like not every, religion has an exact Bible you can go to, but there are usually some sacred texts. That's kind of hard to say. So the Vedas are the first ones. You don't have to remember this for the test, but if you think about Vedic tradition, Vedic, these are the oldest texts of Hinduism. Supposedly these four texts were directly handed down by Brahman, their god, to people. They gave them these, for scrolls or text. And so it comes from the word for wisdom or knowledge, the knowledge of God. Okay, based on the Vedic tradition, there are the Upanishads. And the Upanishads come from this translation, sitting down at the feet of another to listen to his words. So it's this sage tradition, that first tradition I talked about, jnana or whatever you call it. And so, the students would gather around the master at campfires and sit and listen to him. Why I like this is I think in some parts of the Bible they talk about the students having the dust of the feet of the masters on them because they sat around so much. And guess who was a teacher? His name's Jesus, Rabbi, my Rabboni. You know what I mean? So anyway, we're talking about Hinduism, and these are contemplations on Vedic, ideas, and they contain kind of, a lot of the basic Hindu beliefs. Okay, besides the Upanishads, there's the Bhagavad Gita. If you've seen the Hare Krishnas, they've probably given you a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. I have a couple of them in my office. And so it directly translates into Song of God. And so this is a conversation between Lord Krishna and Lord Arjuna. I don't know if he's a lord, but Arjuna. As he's going out into the battlefield, Lord Krishna imparts all this knowledge onto him. And so basically, I don't know, the Bhagavad Gita is awesome. It has so much cool stuff in it. So I highly recommend to at least look through it at some time. Okay, those are three of the books that I'll refer back to. I wish we were in class for this section. This is the Hindu gods, and when I say gods, plural, people go, oh my God, it's polytheistic, and it's like, really, Hinduism is monotheistic, and here's my explanation. This comes from the Rig Veda, Vedic tradition. The one, Brahman, this is their god, Brahman, there's variations on this, so make sure you get the N on there, is the cause of the many. Brahman is the unborn in whom all existing things abide. The one manifests itself as the many. Now, maybe this makes sense and maybe it doesn't, but I'll either use the ocean or the field as an example. The field is the one, but it's made up of the many blades of grass. Okay? But really there is only one thing, it's the field. Same thing about the ocean. The ocean would be like God, but the individual waves would be like us. Yes, we are part of God, but it takes the accumulation of all of us. Okay, this is where I wish I was in class, but I think I have a quote. The most significant thing expressed in the Vedas and the Upanishads especially is that reality is one. Our human world right here tries to make discrete and finite things and separate and taxonomize them, but really all those elements are just part of the one. This is why Tim is big on the tapestry trip. Yes, you're an individual thread, and you can try to disconnect yourself from the universe and live in a vacuum, but you don't. You are a part of the universe. And so if you don't like the word God, let's just use universe. And if you can get over your own thread, your Timness, like Albert Einstein is saying, then you'll start to see the tapestry. How you are a part of an intricate weaving. This is so awesome. I love it. Okay, so what are the gods? Brahman, for lack of a better term my white boy head, is God. But God comes to us in different forms. We go, that's polytheistic. Well, then Christianity is Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. This is what I do every day. I'm a Catholic. Okay, so Brahma doesn't have an N on there. That B-R-A-H, I think, comes from breath. Okay, so did you know inspire means that God breathed into you? But we won't go on that tangent. So Brahma is the creator. That's all you got to remember for the test. So sometimes God comes as a creator. Believe it or not, sometimes God will come as a destroyer, Shiva. That's all you got to remember. And then Vishnu is the preserver. I like Vishnu the best, and here's why. Vishnu can come in a lot of different forms, especially here on planet Earth. Sometimes a fish, a tortoise, even a hog. But he also has come as Lord Krishna and Lord Buddha, and eventually Kalki hasn't come here. And so when he comes to Earth, he has to have a being or a person to travel around in, and they call that being an avatar. And that's why we use the word avatar in computer terminology, and especially in video games. And while in the movie, I forgot I had the video game thing on here, Avatar, this is not who the dude is. That's just the body he's using. He's that guy that is disabled on that bed. But he has inhabited this body just like I inhabit this body. I believe we're all avatars. This is why I wish we were in class. And so Shiva over here had a bunch of wives. I don't think you can see all this. But anyway, Shiva has a bunch of wives, and one of his wives has a kid, Ganesh, you know, the elephant-headed guy. Why does he have an elephant head? I think he walked in on one of the wives that was naked, and she cut his head off, and they had to go find a new head, and the first thing they could find was an elephant. You don't have to remember all that. But the main thing to me, it is very interesting, is this use of the word, if I can come back over here, avatar. Again, for the test, just these three. Okay, so I got a few last pictures. Brahma, if I want to recap for the test, the creator, he has four directions. You can't see his fourth head, but it would be behind him back here. And these four directions are where the four Vedas came from. The four hands handed down to us. Okay, and so Shiva, here you can see when he comes as a destroyer, and sometimes, you know, there's earthquakes and tidal waves and all this kind of other stuff. But Vishnu is the preserver. And these are where all the avatars come from, is Vishnu, because he travels around here on Earth. If God travels around here on Earth in human form, and that's called an avatar, you know who's an avatar? His name's Jesus! That's an avatar, okay? So enough about that section. Okay, I'm getting kind of tired. I hope y'all are still with me, but I have three last things to show you about Hinduism. You don't have to write this down for the test, but I love these three ideas. The first one is jivas. Jivas are individual souls. I don't know if you believe you have a soul, but this crazy boy does. I've done way too many psychedelics. And so we're born as an individual soul, a unique soul. That's not the truth within Buddhism, I should say. It's like they don't believe in that unique soul stuff, and that really is a problem for me becoming Buddhist in a way. Okay, so the other thing is they believe that we move through these increasingly complex life forms until my first human birth. That's when I enter the stream. And then when I enter the stream, I have to re-enter it over and over and over as a human. Now I can move up or down the chain, but hopefully I'm moving up until I learn those lessons, and then I'm no longer born. That's my last birth. I hope that's for me. Okay, so whenever we're born into the world, we grow up and then we grow old, then we come over here, and here comes the Grim Reaper to take us out of the world. But it happens over and over and over again. See how it's infinity? I love that part. Love this painting. And what is it determined on? Our actions in this life determine our future lives. Uh-oh, Jeffrey Epstein. Speaking of which, one day, this has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein, but this belief that, you know, whatever, in our actions determining our future lives. I was fucking with one of my favorite people. His name's Father Andre. It's like, Father Andre, you know, all this heaven stuff. It's like, when we get to heaven, are we going to be in like our old people body or young people body? And he looked right at me, and this is why I love him. He says, Tim, heaven's not a place, it's the eternal now. It's like, okay, this guy gets it. You know what I mean? Then I went on, said, well, how would me and you recognize each other? And this is what he says: by the content of our character, by what we did out here. The summation of what we did would allow us to recognize each other in the spiritual realm. It's like, oh, yes, you go, boy. That is so awesome. And that's why I love him. Okay, last slide. As we enter the stream for our first birth, and then we keep entering over and over in this video game of life, eventually we get to exit and no longer come here. I hope that's coming soon for Tim. Okay, but anyway, the caste system is based on this, even though it's misused. Like down here at the bottom, the Panshamas. Don't have to remember this, like I said, but these are like people that will like clean the streets or the gutters or the sewage workers or people that dispose of the dead. They're the untouchables. All of us supposedly were born as a Panchama at one time, and then eventually we would move up, level up to a common worker. Okay, and so this would be like a farmer or a common laborer, and then, you know, simple people. And then we move up to like, you know, people that deal with economy, business owners, you know, people that wheel and deal, control things, finances. And then move up to a leader, like military political leader, and then move up to a learned man, a sage. I like it because sages are at the top. But see, Brahman, this word comes from Brahma, kind of like God. And the problem is these people genetically have kids that have kids that have kids, and they just control all the wealth. And these people down here have kids that have kids that have kids that just become sewage workers. And that's no good. Okay, so I hope I made sense on those last 3 points. I'll see you next time when we're going to talk about Buddhism.